black twins, threatened by racist bullies, unaware they are black belt fighters. Welcome to a tale of resilience, nerve, and karmic justice. Tonight, we follow twin siblings whose peaceful world is ripped apart by a storm of racism and bullying, only for their tormentors to learn a stunning secret. These twins are highly skilled in the martial arts. Through surprising twists and turns, we'll witness their journey from silent endurance to fearless confrontation. This story delves into the painful undercurrents of prejudice that lurk in quiet communities, unmasking the harsh reality faced by those who dare to stand up for themselves. Expect a web of unexpected revelations, tense showdowns, and ultimate payback that spares no one guilty of wrongdoing. Hold your breath as each paragraph unveils new layers of suspense. Now, sit back and immerse yourself in a powerful tale where strength, family, and unbreakable spirits collide. Before diving into the story, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss the latest stories. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. 17-year-old fraternal twins, Jasmine and Jordan McAllister, had lived in the suburban enclave of Oak Ridge for most of their lives. If you were to drive through Oak Ridge on a summer evening, you'd see rows of immaculate lawns, white picket fences, and a Starbucks on every other block. The tranquil exterior suggested a picture-perfect community, brimming with neighborly warmth. For the most part, that picture wasn't wrong, except when it came to hidden bigotry. The McAllisters were one of the few black families in Oak Ridge, and while many neighbors treated them with kindness, an undercurrent of hostility lingered just below the surface. Sometimes, sideways glances or hushed whispers followed them in the aisles of the local Target. Other times, it was a direct challenge, like the time a man loudly asked if Jordan was lost, while the teen was simply browsing a video game section. Their parents, Winston and Angela McAllister, both worked tirelessly to give their kids every opportunity. Winston was an aerospace engineer at Boeing, often commuting 2 hours to the company's facility in Seattle. Angela taught second grade at Oak Ridge Elementary. While they sometimes considered moving closer to Winston's workplace, they stayed put in Oak Ridge for one reason: the local martial arts academy run by Grandmaster Chen, a revered Korean-American taekwondo expert who had taken the twins under his wing since they were 6. Though few in town knew it, Jasmine and Jordan were black belt fighters exceptionally skilled. In fact, over the years, they traveled the country, competing in national taekwondo tournaments, collecting medals, trophies, and plenty of bruises along the way. But their parents insisted they keep a low profile. Confidence doesn't need attention, Angela often reminded them. Real strength doesn't need an audience. That mindset had served them well for most of their childhood. In middle school, they shrugged off teasing about their close bond or their geeky interests, such as playing co-op on their Nintendo Switch, devouring Marvel comics, and staying up late to watch anime. But now, as they navigated the corridors of Oak Ridge High, they found themselves facing a more dangerous form of harassment, one driven by hate and fueled by ignorance. The trouble began one crisp autumn afternoon. After final bell, Jasmine and Jordan were on their way to the school library to research college scholarships. Though they were only juniors, both had ambitious dreams. Jordan wanted to study computer science at Stanford, and Jasmine aspired to major in journalism at Columbia. They had just turned a corner when they nearly collided with 4 hulking figures standing shoulder to shoulder, practically blocking the hallway. These 4 were among the most feared bullies in Oak Ridge High: Brandon Tate, a sneering linebacker with a vile reputation; Tristan Moore, whose height and muscular build made people quake; Mike Rogers, the tall, silent type but always complicit in trouble; and their self-appointed leader, Carter Hall, a senior whose arrogance outweighed any shred of conscience he might have once possessed. Jordan instinctively stepped in front of Jasmine. "Excuse us," he said politely, attempting to maneuver around them. Carter shoved Jordan's shoulder. "Where you rushing to, kid? Got something more important than greeting your classmates?" His tone dripped with mock politeness. Jasmine and Jordan exchanged a look. Jordan's fists tightened slightly, but he recalled Grandmaster Chen's mantra, Strike only when there is no other path. Jasmine gritted her teeth and tried a friendlier approach. We're just heading to the library, she said, forcing a calm tone despite her racing heart. But Carter and his crew simply stood their ground. Brandon let out a low chuckle. Maybe you two should find another library somewhere that's for your kind. His voice dropped on the last phrase, sending an icy wave down Jasmine's spine. They'd heard racist hints before, but never so brazen and direct. Heart-pounding, Jordan took a measured step forward. We have every right to be here, he said softly, controlling the anger that simmered in his chest. Tristan snorted, stepping in closer until he was nearly chest to chest with Jordan. You want to test that theory? He hissed. Silence draped the hallway. Jasmine felt adrenaline flood her system, her training urging her to move. Yet she and Jordan remained calm, just as they'd been taught. If they escalated now, they'd risk revealing their secret skills. And no doubt, the fallout would be severe, especially for a pair of black twins in a predominantly white town like Oak Ridge. Finally, Carter broke the standoff with an unsettling grin. Go on, then, he said, gesturing theatrically for them to pass. But watch your step, McAllisters. This is just the beginning. Jasmine's heart hammered as she and Jordan scooted past, stifling the urge to retaliate. They couldn't know it yet, but that tense hallway encounter was the first drop of poison in what would soon become a tidal wave of threats, intimidation, and worse. That evening, Jasmine and Jordan returned home, still rattled by the confrontation. They lived in a modest two-story house on Magnolia Lane, a street lined with tall firs that whispered in the wind. The sight of their home, with its bright porch light and the comforting murmur of the TV inside, usually brought relief. Tonight, the aftertaste of Carter's threat lingered. Angela was in the kitchen, preparing her favorite jambalaya. The aroma of onion, bell peppers, and sausage wafted through the air. Winston, wearing a Boeing polo shirt, tinkered with a remote control plane on the dining table, a weekend hobby he loved. Spotting the twins' troubled expressions, he set down the tiny screwdriver. Something up? He asked gently. Though they hesitated, Jasmine eventually recounted the hallway standoff. Winston's face hardened, and Angela paused in stirring the pot, her hand trembling just a bit. Both parents had known that prejudice existed in Oak Ridge. There had been smaller incidents over the years, but this was the first time the threat of violence felt so real. Kids like that often don't realize the consequences of their actions, Winston said carefully, trying to stay diplomatic. But if anything like that happens again, you need to tell us, or tell a teacher or the principal. Angela placed a comforting hand on Jasmine's shoulder. We raised you to stand up for what's right. Just remember what Grandmaster Chen has taught you about control. Don't let anger take over. Jasmine and Jordan nodded. They'd always believed in non-violent solutions, preferring to focus on their academics and martial arts training. Perhaps the bullies were simply testing the waters, eager to see if intimidation would work. Unfortunately, this was not the end of it. The next day, rumors about the twins' confrontation swirled through Oak Ridge High. Some students whispered that the McAllisters were too bold, daring to stare down the town's most notorious troublemakers. Others hinted that Carter was on a warpath, determined to prove nobody could challenge him. Over lunch in the crowded cafeteria, Jasmine sat with her friend Monique Davis, a bright-eyed flute player in the school band. She listened sympathetically as Jasmine described the tension from the day before. You two need to watch out, Monique warned, glancing around nervously. Carter and his crew have been bragging about teaching some people a lesson. Jordan, meanwhile, stood by the vending machines, rummaging for change. He spotted Tristan and Mike off in a corner, smirking in his direction. Their body language suggested trouble. Unsettled, Jordan returned to the table, urging Jasmine to keep her guard up. For the rest of the day, the twins found themselves glancing over their shoulders. Carter's group seemed to pop up at random, in the hall, near their lockers, even outside the band room. They said nothing, merely stared, as though silently asserting their dominance. Finally, after school, Jordan and Jasmine decided to visit Grandmaster Chen's academy for extra training. The academy was a modest brick building on Elm Street, sandwiched between a pizzeria and a hardware store. Inside, the faint smell of sweat and old foam mats permeated the air. A bright mural of a soaring dragon, painted by one of Chen's former students, stretched across the far wall. Grandmaster Chen was a slim, wiry man in his 60s, with silver hair and a posture so straight it could have been carved from marble. He welcomed them with his usual calm smile, but immediately sensed their distress. During the warm-up, he glided over to them. "Your energy is off," he said softly. "Something troubles you." Jordan exchanged a glance with Jasmine. Carefully, they explained the intensifying situation at school, racial slurs hinted under breath, menacing stares, Carter's not-so-veiled threats. Grandmaster Chen listened with a furrowed brow but a deliberate calm. "Some battles are of the mind and heart," he said. "Physical skill alone can't conquer hatred, but it can protect you when necessary." He guided them through a series of complex kata, focusing on fluid transitions between defense and offense. "Remember," he said, moving gracefully, "the goal is not to destroy your opponent, but to neutralize their threat and preserve your own honor." By the end of practice, the twins were drenched in sweat, yet their minds felt clearer. Still, dread coiled at the edge of their thoughts. They knew the bullies wouldn't stop unless forced to, and though they tried to believe that reason or adult intervention might prevail, a gnawing feeling in their guts told them a confrontation was looming, one far more dangerous than a few nasty words in a high school hallway. Friday night arrived, bringing a temporary sense of relief for many Oak Ridge High students who looked forward to football games, parties, and carefree teenage mischief. Jasmine and Jordan, however, felt uneasy. The tension at school had escalated so quickly that both had trouble focusing in class. Jasmine caught Carter glaring at her as she walked into her honors English period. Jordan spotted Brandon making throat-slashing gestures in the cafeteria line. Meanwhile, teachers seemed oblivious, concerned more about next week's standardized tests than the malignant undercurrent of racism brewing among their students. After dinner, Winston settled in front of the TV to watch the Seattle Seahawks game, hoping the excitement might take his mind off the teen struggles. Angela, sensing her children's restless energy, suggested a trip to the local multiplex to see a new Marvel movie. Maybe a couple of hours in a dark theater would offer some respite. Jasmine and Jordan agreed, piling into the family's silver Toyota Camry as twilight set in. They chatted about the upcoming Taekwondo tournament they planned to enter next month. Grandmaster Chen believed they had a solid chance at winning, but thoughts of Carter and his crew kept creeping in, like an unwelcome chill in the air. They reached the multiplex, a sprawling cinema adjacent to a Barnes & Noble and a few fast food chains just as the neon signs began to glow. To their surprise, in the parking lot, they spotted Carter's black Dodge Charger, easily recognizable by its tinted windows and throaty exhaust. A flicker of apprehension crossed the twins' faces. "Think he's here?" Jordan asked quietly, peering around. Jasmine's stomach clenched. She wasn't eager for a confrontation tonight, especially not in public. Yet they tried to reassure themselves. It was a big theater with multiple showtimes. Maybe Carter was just there to see a horror flick with his friends. Inside, they bought their tickets and found seats near the back of Theater 7. Previews flickered across the giant screen as the crowd quietly settled. The lights dimmed, and for a moment, Jasmine and Jordan exhaled, letting the movie's opening scene capture their attention. Explosions and witty banter filled the screen, the typical Marvel hero introduction. But 20 minutes into the film, as tension built on screen, a voice hissed from the row behind them. "Surprise, you two are out after dark." The malicious whisper was followed by faint snickers. Jordan stiffened, recognizing the voice. Carter. Jasmine's pulse spiked, though she tried to ignore him. The last thing she wanted was a scene. She leaned closer to Jordan. "Let's just watch the movie," she whispered. For a while, Carter and whoever was with him remained quiet. Then, just as a major battle scene began, a few popcorn kernels landed in Jasmine's hair. She tensed, brushed them away. Jordan shot a warning glare over his shoulder but couldn't see clearly in the darkness. Another minute passed. More popcorn, this time aimed at Jordan's ear. He clenched his jaw. The audience shushed them, irritated at the commotion. Jasmine prayed Carter would give up and watch the movie. But the harassment continued. Quiet taunts, small objects tossed, a mocking whistle every time a black hero appeared on screen. Finally, Jordan couldn't take it anymore. He stood up, turned around, and in a low voice demanded, "Knock it off, Carter." A few heads in the theater turned, but the booming soundtrack drowned out any real confrontation. Carter leaned forward, flashing a smug grin. "Or what?" he replied in a derisive whisper. "You gonna punch me in a crowded theater? Don't you know that'd be a great headline? Local hoodlums attack star athlete? Not a good look for you, is it?" Anger flared in Jordan's chest, but Jasmine tugged at his sleeve, urging him to sit. By now, her heart was pounding so loudly, she could barely hear the movie. Reluctantly, Jordan sank back into his seat. Carter chuckled and muttered something unintelligible. Then, mercifully, he and his companion, who turned out to be Brandon, got up and left, presumably satisfied with spoiling the twins' night. Once the credits rolled, Jasmine and Jordan walked to the lobby, scanning the area for any sign of Carter or Brandon. They seemed to be gone. Still, the twins' earlier sense of relief had evaporated, replaced by a chilling realization: the bullies were everywhere, and they had no qualms about escalating their harassment in public spaces. Outside, the sky was draped in thick clouds, and a damp wind whipped across the parking lot. The twins hurried to their Camry, discovering a vile message scratched into the driver's door. It read, simply, "Go back." Jasmine's hands shook, tears of rage pricking her eyes. Jordan placed a protective arm around her. They took photos of the damage. Then, in silence, they drove home, hearts heavy. It was obvious that Carter and his gang were just getting started. Saturday dawned with a mix of bleak, overcast skies and the promise of a drizzling rain, a fitting reflection of the twins' mood. Angela left early for a professional development workshop at Oak Ridge Elementary, while Winston headed off to pick up supplies for one of his personal projects, a homemade drone he'd been tinkering with for months. That left Jasmine and Jordan alone in the house for the morning. Though the two often spent weekend mornings relaxing or browsing social media, neither felt like idling. Instead, they decided to be proactive. The night's vandalism had jolted them into action. First, they documented the damage to the car more thoroughly, ensuring they had pictures from multiple angles. Next, they wrote down everything that had happened since the first confrontation with Carter's group: the hallway threats, the cafeteria gestures, the relentless stares, and the theater harassment. Their plan was simple: build a solid case for the school administration and, if necessary, the police. But as they compiled notes on Jasmine's laptop, Jordan's phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed on the screen. He frowned and answered, "Hello?" At first, there was only silence. Then came an eerie whisper, "Watch your step, boy. You're not safe in this town. Leave while you can." The caller hung up. Jordan's heart thundered in his chest. He told Jasmine, who immediately grabbed her phone to record any future calls. Sure enough, minutes later, the same unknown number texted Jordan, "You think your fancy black belts give you the right to act like you belong? Keep pushing, and you'll find out how wrong you are." Chills crawled over Jasmine's skin when Jordan showed her the message. She typed a reply, "Who is this?" but received no answer. Instead, a follow-up text arrived 10 minutes later. "We know where you train. We know your secrets. Don't think we won't use them." At that, both twins stared at each other in shock. Could Carter's group possibly know about their martial arts accolades? They'd never advertised them in school, rarely mentioned tournaments, and their trophies were all locked away in their bedrooms. Grandmaster Chen was discreet about his students' achievements, especially minors. So how did these bullies figure it out? Suddenly, Jordan realized an unsettling possibility. At past tournaments, local newspapers sometimes published short features on winners, complete with pictures and hometown details. Maybe Carter or one of his lackeys stumbled across those articles online. Or perhaps they simply asked around enough, and someone let something slip. Regardless, they knew. And if they knew, it meant the bullying might not just be about racism anymore. It was also about a twisted attempt to dethrone them from something they excelled at. Later that afternoon, Winston and Angela returned. The twins showed them the threatening text and the notes they'd gathered. Angela was livid, but also fearful. "This can't go on," she insisted. "We have to go to the principal. Maybe the police as well. Winston nodded. I'll speak with Principal Rogers on Monday. He's known me for years, and he should take this seriously. Jasmine bit her lip. But what if it makes everything worse? Carter's father is on the school board, remember? Winston's lips thinned. Oak Ridge was a small town, and local politics had a way of protecting certain families. Carter's father, Harold Hall, was not only on the school board, but a wealthy donor to several local initiatives. Rumor had it that he had the ear of the mayor. Nevertheless, Winston refused to let that deter him. We'll handle it, he said firmly. Sunday passed quietly, though an air of uneasy anticipation filled the house. The twins made their weekly trip to Grandmaster Chen's academy for advanced sparring drills. Chen sensed their agitation. Your focus is scattered, he remarked, guiding them through a joint lock exercise. Violent hearts feed on fear. Don't let them sense yours. Jasmine exhaled, trying to clear her mind, but she couldn't stop imagining Carter and Brandon mocking them from the sidelines. Jordan, for his part, channeled his frustration into each carefully executed move, striking the padded target with fierce precision. The effort left him drenched in sweat, but no more at peace. That night, the family huddled together in the living room, discussing their plan for Monday. Winston would take time off work to accompany the twins to Principal Rogers' office. They'd present their evidence, the photos, the text messages, and the descriptions of each incident. Angela would also speak with the school board about possible measures to protect the twins. None of them could predict how drastically events would unfold. The darkness swirling around Carter and his crew was about to deepen, and the McAllisters had no idea just how far those bullies would go to see their threats through. Monday morning dawned bleak and rainy, as if the sky itself sensed the coming storm. Winston, dressed in a sharp navy suit, accompanied Jasmine and Jordan to Oak Ridge High. The halls buzzed with the usual Monday doldrums, yawning students, squeaky locker doors, the low hum of fluorescent lights. Principal Edward Rogers was a tall, balding man in his 50s. His office smelled faintly of stale coffee and sounded of constant phone rings. He greeted Winston with a polite smile, then asked the twins to sit down. The door closed with a soft click, and the conversation began. Winston laid out the evidence: photos of the vandalized car door, screenshots of text messages, and the twins' meticulous account of each racist or threatening event. Principal Rogers' mouth tightened into a concerned frown. I had no idea things had escalated this far, he said solemnly. I'm truly sorry you've had to endure this. Encouraged by his sincerity, Winston pressed on, mentioning Carter's father's role on the school board. Rogers sighed and rubbed his temples. Harold Hall can be difficult, he admitted, but that doesn't excuse Carter's behavior. Rest assured, I will investigate this thoroughly. Thank you, Winston replied. We just want Jasmine and Jordan to be safe here. The principal nodded, took notes, and promised to call in Carter and his friends for questioning. Yet as Winston, Jasmine, and Jordan exited the office, an uneasy feeling gnawed at them. Words often didn't match reality in a town where the halls wielded significant influence. Back in the hallway, the twins headed to their first class. Students cast curious glances their way, as though anticipating some eruption of drama. Indeed, by mid-morning, rumors spread that the McAllisters were snitching to the administration. Carter's group had conveniently vanished for the day. Some said they were homesick. Others claimed they'd gone on a senior skip day. Either way, they weren't present to answer for their actions. During lunch, Jasmine overheard a conversation at a nearby table. Two girls whispered that Carter's father was furious, threatening to sue the school for defamation if they tried to discipline his son. The rumor felt all too plausible. She shared it with Jordan, who clenched his jaw in frustration. Figures, he muttered. They think they're above the rules. Yet not everyone was turning a blind eye. Monique Davis approached their table with a determined expression. I'm with you, she said, firmly, setting down her lunch tray. A few other classmates nodded in agreement. Some even offered to speak on the twins' behalf if an official investigation began. Their support offered a glimmer of hope in an otherwise grim atmosphere. Still, the end of the school day arrived without any resolution. Principal Rogers had called Winston to update him. Carter and Brandon were out, so any disciplinary steps would be delayed until they returned. For now, the matter remained in limbo. Walking home under drizzling rain, Jasmine and Jordan stuck close together. The wind rustled the trees, scattering wet leaves along the sidewalk. Suddenly, a honk shattered the silence. A silver pickup truck pulled up alongside them. Tristan Moore leaned out the passenger window, smirking. Before the twins could react, he hurled an egg that splattered across Jordan's jacket. Jasmine gasped, her eyes darting to Tristan's triumphant leer. "Better watch yourselves," he taunted. "This is only the start." Then the truck roared away, leaving the twins drenched, humiliated, and angrier than ever. By the time they reached home, Jordan was seething. The idea of controlling his temper felt increasingly like a losing battle. He stormed upstairs, peeled off his ruined jacket, and set to punching the heavy bag in his room. Each strike echoed with frustration. Meanwhile, Jasmine sank onto the couch, scrolling through social media for any sign of Carter's latest moves. Most posts were cryptic, but a handful referenced the twins, mocking them for crying to the principal. She shut off her phone, tears of anger stinging her eyes. They had done the right thing, yet it only felt like stepping into quicksand. The more they fought back, the more vicious the bullying became. Little did they know, the worst was yet to come, an act so brazen it would leave Oak Ridge stunned, forcing the town to confront a darkness it had long pretended didn't exist. Wednesday morning brought a renewed sense of tension throughout the halls of Oak Ridge High. Whispers circulated about an overnight incident. Hateful graffiti sprayed on one of the school's brick walls. By the time students arrived, janitors had mostly scrubbed it off, but remnants of a vile slur were still faintly visible. Everyone had an opinion on who was responsible, and many eyes turned toward Carter's group, though no one claimed to have seen them in the act. As Jasmine and Jordan made their way to homeroom, they noticed Carter and Brandon swaggering down the hallway, accompanied by a new face, a lanky boy with bleached hair and a permanent scowl. The trio stopped to chat with Tristan near the water fountains, throwing sidelong glances at the twins. The message was clear. The bullies' circle was expanding. In homeroom, Mr. Mathers asked for everyone's attention. "I have an announcement from Principal Rogers," he began, voice shaky. "It's regarding some unfortunate events in the past week." He read a brief statement about intolerance and the school's zero-tolerance policy, but the speech felt hollow, especially when Carter and Brandon smirked through the entire reading without consequence. Jordan glanced at Jasmine, both feeling their blood simmering. Later, during a study period, Jordan spotted Carter at the far side of the library, whispering with the new kid. Their gazes flickered to Jordan, then back to each other. It sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. What were they plotting now? By lunchtime, he got his answer. As Jasmine stood in the cafeteria line, the overhead TV monitors, which usually displayed menus or school announcements, suddenly flickered with a shaky cell phone video. At first, it was unclear what was happening on screen. The angle was awkward, but then the images sharpened. It was footage of Jordan and Jasmine sparring, presumably at one of their Taekwondo tournaments. The camera panned to a scoreboard revealing them as winners. A loud snippet of the announcer's voice boomed. "In the black belt division, champion McAllister." A flush of shock spread through the cafeteria. Students craned their necks, some gasping, others murmuring in awe or disbelief. The clip repeated, showing Jordan executing a flying sidekick, Jasmine performing a swift takedown. Applause from the recorded crowd echoed around the stunned cafeteria. Then the screen went black, replaced by a text message that scrolled in bold letters. "You can fight, but you can't hide. This is our school." Seconds later, the regular school announcements resumed, leaving the entire cafeteria in stunned silence. Jasmine's tray nearly slipped from her hands. Jordan rushed to her side, both hearts pounding. This was a massive violation. The bullies had hacked the cafeteria TV system to publicly reveal the twins' martial arts background, presumably to shame them or paint them as aggressors. Principal Rogers was summoned. He stormed into the cafeteria, demanding to know who was responsible. Carter and his group feigned ignorance, shooting the twins mocking looks as if to say, "We beat you at your own game." Yet many students were more impressed than anything else, and a few even clapped. "Wow, that's so cool," someone exclaimed. But the bullies' intentions were transparent. They wanted to twist the narrative, painting the McAllisters as dangerous fighters who posed a threat to ordinary students. Sure enough, by the end of the day, rumors began floating that Jordan once hospitalized someone at a tournament, or that Jasmine used her black belt skills to bully underclassmen. None of it was true, but gossip had a way of spreading like wildfire. At home, Winston was livid when he heard what happened. He fired off angry emails to the principal, the district tech department, and even threatened legal action if Carter's gang wasn't exposed and punished. Angela tried to calm him, though she herself was deeply rattled. "They're trying to make the kids look like aggressors," she said. "It's insane." Jasmine and Jordan, for their part, were torn between rage and anxiety. They had nothing to hide. Their black belts were earned through hard work and discipline, but the malicious use of that footage stung. Worse still, the bullies were escalating beyond petty hallway encounters, venturing into orchestrated attacks that reached the entire student body. Grandmaster Chen's words of wisdom rang in their ears. Violent hearts feed on fear. But how could they not be afraid when their very identities were being twisted to justify hatred? Unbeknownst to them, that cafeteria hack was merely the opening act of a sinister plan. Carter and his group were determined to prove their power went far beyond school walls. And soon, the entire town of Oak Ridge would bear witness to just how far they would take it. 2 days later, a restless Friday evening settled over Oak Ridge. Jasmine and Jordan stayed home, trying to avoid any public run-ins with Carter's crew. After dinner, the family gathered in the living room. Winston had just finished another stern email to the school board, while Angela flipped through local news channels, hoping for some distraction. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Jordan, glancing out the front window, saw no car in the driveway, no figure standing on the porch. A prickle of unease drifted through him. Carefully, Winston opened the door, only to find a battered cardboard box on the welcome mat. There was no label, no return address. He brought the box inside and set it on the coffee table. With the family watching nervously, he lifted the flaps. Inside lay a decapitated practice dummy head from a martial arts store, splattered with red paint. Tucked under it was a note scrawled in Sharpie. "Black belts bleed like everyone else. Leave Oak Ridge now." A collective gasp filled the room. Jasmine's stomach lurched. Angela covered her mouth, eyes brimming with shock. Winston's jaw tightened as he read the words aloud. This was no longer teenage bullying. It was an unmistakable threat. And if Carter's gang had the nerve to leave such a message on their doorstep, what else might they do? Within minutes, Winston was on the phone with the police, demanding an immediate investigation. An officer arrived, a man named Officer Bryant, who took photos of the box and the note, then asked a series of questions. Had they angered anyone recently? Did they suspect a particular individual? Winston explained the ongoing harassment by Carter and his friends. Officer Bryant scribbled notes, occasionally nodding. "I'll file a report," he said. "But without direct evidence linking this to them, it might be difficult to press charges." Frustration radiated from every member of the McAllister family. Jasmine felt her eyes burn with tears. "So we just wait until they do something worse?" she asked bitterly. Officer Bryant tried to offer reassurance, promising increased patrol in the neighborhood, but none of it felt like enough. After the officer left, the family sat in tense silence. Finally, Angela broke the hush. "I can't believe we're dealing with this here, in 2020's America," she muttered. "This town has to see what's happening. It can't just keep pretending everything is fine." Winston nodded, silent. Then he spoke softly, as if shaping each word with great care. "We've tried the school. We've called the police. If they escalate further, we might have to defend ourselves." Jordan looked up, meeting his father's gaze. He thought about Grandmaster Chen's lessons: never start a fight, but never run from one if it's inevitable. And right now, it felt more inevitable than ever. That weekend, the twins threw themselves into extra training sessions. Winston accompanied them to Grandmaster Chen's academy, explaining the severity of the threats they faced. Chen's face darkened at the story of the dummy head. "Hatred can be cunning," he said gravely. "Sometimes, a demonstration of skill is the only language bullies understand. He had the twins practice advanced self-defense maneuvers, especially those meant to handle multiple attackers. They sparred fiercely, sweat pouring down their brows, each strike fueled by pent-up frustration. By the end of the day, their muscles ached, but their spirits felt sharper. If worst came to worst, they would be prepared. Meanwhile, the tension in Oak Ridge thickened. Word of the threatening box spread among the local black community, inciting anger and concern. A few families reached out to the McAllisters with support. Others whispered about possible connections between Harold Hall, the powerful school board member, and the local police chief. The sense of being outnumbered was palpable. As Sunday night crept closer, an ominous calm enveloped the McAllister household. The twins tried to focus on homework, but every noise outside made them jump. Winston double-checked the locks on every door and window. Angela hovered near the phone, half expecting another anonymous message. The stage was set for a final showdown, one that none of them could avoid for much longer. Monday morning felt like stepping into a pressure cooker. The sky hung low and gray, promising rain. At Oak Ridge High, an uneasy hush replaced the usual chaotic pulse of students. The hateful graffiti from last week had left its mark. Extra security roamed the hallways, checking badges and scanning for any sign of trouble. Jasmine and Jordan arrived with their father, who insisted on escorting them. Principal Rogers, looking more beleaguered than ever, assured Winston that the school was doing everything possible to identify and discipline the culprits behind the cafeteria hack and the threatening messages. Winston's tone remained polite but steely. "My children's safety must be guaranteed, Mr. Rogers." As the twins navigated their morning classes, Carter and his inner circle were notably absent again. Rumors swirled that they had been suspended pending investigation. Others claimed Harold Hall had pulled them out temporarily to avoid consequences. That only fueled the rumor mill more. Were they planning something off campus? In third period, Jordan's phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. "We're not at school, but we're watching. Today is your last warning. After that, it's open season." Jordan's blood ran cold. He glanced at Jasmine, who received an identical message moments later. By lunchtime, the tension was unbearable. Monique joined the twins at their table, speaking in hushed tones. "People are talking about Carter planning some big stunt. Someone overheard him say, 'They'll regret messing with me.'" "Have you told the principal?" Jasmine asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Monique nodded. "He says they have no evidence of an actual plot, just rumors. I'm worried." So were Jasmine and Jordan. The day dragged on, every minute feeling like an eternity. By the final bell, they left the building, scanning the parking lot for any sign of trouble. Winston had managed to leave work early to pick them up. Together, they headed home, bracing for whatever new threat might come. But the hours passed quietly, with no phone calls or ominous packages. The next day followed suit, eerie calm. No bullies in sight, no new threats. By midweek, the tension began to fray everyone's nerves. Angela had trouble sleeping, drifting into nightmares where Carter's group lurked in the shadows. Winston alternated between anger and dread, wanting to protect his family but unsure how to outmaneuver these hidden antagonists. Then, on Thursday evening, the phone rang during dinner. Angela picked up, expecting a telemarketer. Instead, an authoritative voice introduced himself as Detective Franklin from the Oak Ridge Police Department. Her heart leapt into her throat. "I've got some concerning news," Detective Franklin said. "We received an anonymous tip about a plan to target your children at the upcoming Oak Ridge High pep rally this Friday night. The tip mentioned that certain individuals want to make a statement involving your twins. We're investigating, but I suggest you remain vigilant." Angela's voice shook as she thanked the detective and hung up. Winston set down his fork, face ashen. "That's tomorrow," he said quietly. "Are we sure we should even let them go?" Jasmine and Jordan exchanged looks. On the one hand, fear twisted in their guts. On the other, they refused to be terrorized into hiding. "It's our school," Jasmine said, her voice trembling but resolute. "If we keep running, they win." Jordan nodded, adrenaline tightening his jaw. "We'll go. We'll stay alert. Besides, there'll be teachers, staff, maybe even more security there." Winston hesitated, weighing the risks. Finally, he exhaled. "All right, but I'm coming with you, and I'll be watching like a hawk." That night, the twins prepared themselves mentally. replaying Grandmaster Chen's lessons in their minds. The pep rally was supposed to be a light-hearted event, cheering on the football team, dancing in the stands, showing school spirit. Yet it now felt like stepping into a battlefield. Neither twin knew exactly what Carter's group had planned. They only knew it would be big, brazen, and potentially dangerous. Friday night arrived, bringing a bittersweet mix of anticipation and dread. The Oak Ridge High gym was packed with students, families, and staff, all eager for the final pep rally before homecoming. Banners and balloons in the school colors, navy and gold, hung from the rafters. The marching band tuned their instruments in a corner, preparing to burst into the fight song. A current of excitement buzzed through the crowd, though for Jasmine and Jordan, it felt more like static electricity warning of a coming storm. They entered with Winston, who found a seat in the bleachers, scanning the gym with hawk-like intensity. Angela couldn't make it. She had a school function, but she'd given each twin a tight hug before they left, urging them to call her at the first sign of trouble. Jasmine's and Jordan's eyes flicked around the space, searching for Carter or his crew. At first, they saw no sign of them. The rally began with a flourish cheers, music, and a humorous skit by the drama club. The football coach delivered a rousing speech about teamwork and school pride. Then the cheerleading squad performed an acrobatic routine that drew whistles and applause. By all appearances, it was a typical high school celebration, yet something felt off. Jordan noticed 3 or 4 older men loitering near the gym side entrance. They didn't look like school staff or parents. They wore matching black jackets and stood with their arms folded, eyes sweeping over the crowd. A chill crawled up Jordan's spine. Who are they? Suddenly, the lights cut out. At first, the crowd assumed it was a dramatic cue. Whispers rose in the darkness. Then, with a crackle, a single spotlight shone on the center of the gym floor. Carter Hall stood in its beam, microphone in hand, flanked by Brandon, Tristan, and the bleach-haired kid. Gasps and murmurs spread as the audience realized the school's most notorious bullies had hijacked the pep rally. "Hey there, Oak Ridge High," Carter drawled, voice echoing in the silent gym. "I'm sure you all missed me." A few uneasy chuckles rippled through the crowd, but mostly there was tension. Winston jumped to his feet, scanning for an administrator, but it seemed they'd been blindsided. "You've all heard the rumors, right?" Carter continued, his eyes seeking out Jasmine and Jordan. "Rumors that we've been picking on a couple of so-called black belt heroes. Some of you might think we're just racists or bigots. But let's set the record straight tonight." The spotlight swung across the stands, finally landing on Jasmine and Jordan. A rush of heat spread across Jasmine's face as hundreds of heads turned in their direction. She stood, fists clenched. Jordan rose beside her, muscles taut with apprehension. Carter smirked. "See, these two have been running to the principal, the cops, their mommy and daddy, just because we asked them a simple question. Do they really belong here?" He paused, letting the words seep into the crowd. "Well, why don't we settle this once and for all?" Tristan grabbed the mic. "Let's see if they're so tough." "Jordan, Jasmine, why don't you come down here and show us those black belt moves? Or are you chicken?" A wave of uncomfortable murmurs swept the gym. Some students looked at the twins with sympathy. Others appeared intrigued, like they were hoping for a show. Winston tried to push forward, but the suspicious men at the side entrance moved to block him, revealing themselves as part of the intimidation plan. That was enough for Jordan. He couldn't stand by while Carter spewed his hateful rhetoric in front of the entire school. "We won't be your spectacle," Jordan shouted, voice echoing. "We came to support our school, not to fight a bunch of cowards." Carter laughed, motioning for the lights to return. The overhead lamps flickered on, revealing the entire basketball court set up with tables and folding chairs. "Too scared, huh?" he taunted. "That's what I thought." A swirl of conflicting emotions roiled in Jasmine's gut: outrage, shame, and a fierce desire to stand up for herself. With half the school watching, she and Jordan made their decision, stepping into the aisle. No matter how dangerous it was, they couldn't let Carter control the narrative any longer. The moment Jasmine and Jordan reached the gym floor, the energy in the room shifted. Teachers rushed forward, shouting for Carter and his gang to return to their seats. Principal Rogers scrambled across the sidelines, fumbling for the microphone to regain control. But Carter's group stood firm, exuding an air of calculated defiance. The four older men in black jackets moved closer, forming a sort of perimeter around Carter's posse, as though daring anyone to interfere. Winston, meanwhile, tried to force his way onto the court, but he was blocked by two of the black-jacketed men. Fear and anger clouded his eyes. He yelled for help, but the band's instruments blared, the drumline kicking in as if on cue. Chaos took hold. Some students fled the bleachers, while others pressed in closer, curious and apprehensive. Standing under the harsh glare of the gym lights, Jasmine and Jordan felt their heartbeats drumming in their ears. They were surrounded by onlookers, some with phones raised, recording every second. Carter smirked, stepping forward with the microphone still in hand. "You see, Oak Ridge," he sneered. "These two have been crying victim, acting like we're terrorizing them just because they're black. But guess what? They're not victims, they're trained fighters, using their black belts as a weapon to intimidate honest folks." He paused, letting the accusation hang. "We just want to make sure everyone knows the truth." "You're lying," Jasmine spat, her voice ringing out. "You've threatened us, vandalized our property, and sent us racist messages. Now you want to twist reality in front of everyone?" Carter's eyes gleamed with a chilling intensity. "Racist, you say? Maybe we just don't like people who think they're better than us." Brandon, Tristan, and the bleach, haired accomplice spread out, forming a rough semicircle around the twins. The tension was electric. Carter tossed aside the microphone, letting it clatter across the polished floor. For a moment, the entire gym hushed, the audience collectively holding its breath. Then, in a heartbeat, Tristan lunged at Jordan, swinging a wild fist. Instinct kicked in. Jordan sidestepped the blow, using his forearm to deflect the punch. Exactly as Grandmaster Chen had drilled into him, the crowd gasped, many pressing forward for a better view. Brandon made a grab for Jasmine's arm. She twisted away, hooking his wrist and flipping him to the ground with a crisp over-the-shoulder throw. Screams erupted from the bleachers, the noise ricocheting off the gym walls. Winston, still blocked by the men in black, yelled for someone to help, but no one seemed able to quell the pandemonium. In seconds, the confrontation escalated into a full-blown brawl. Tristan recovered and charged at Jordan again, this time joined by the bleach-haired kid, who aimed a kick at Jordan's side. Jordan blocked the kick, then spun around to deliver a snapping side kick of his own, connecting with the bleach-haired teen's ribs. He doubled over with a groan, stumbling back. Jasmine dodged a barrage of fists from Brandon, then glimpsed Carter circling behind her. She pivoted just in time to block a punch aimed at her shoulder. Carter's expression twisted with rage as he realized she was no easy target. He threw a second punch, more forceful, but Jasmine ducked and countered with a well-practiced roundhouse kick that clipped Carter's jaw. The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers, screams, and stunned silence. Phones flashed, capturing every moment. Principal Rogers, desperate to regain control, hollered for security. A few teachers tried to intervene, but the black-jacketed men shoved them back. One teacher, Miss Harmon, nearly fell into the bleachers as she was pushed aside. Another staff member, Coach Daniels, confronted one of the men, but was quickly overpowered. It was clear these men were not random bystanders. They appeared to have some training themselves, or at least enough brute force to keep the staff at bay. Meanwhile, Tristan and Brandon regrouped, flanking Jordan while Carter tried to shake off the daze from Jasmine's kick. The bleach-haired teen clutched his side. Still winded, Jordan found himself facing two attackers at once. He remembered his training: keep moving, never let them trap you. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, he performed a defensive sequence of blocks, using precise footwork to avoid being cornered. He feigned left, drawing Tristan's attention, then pivoted right, slamming an elbow strike into Brandon's midsection. Brandon gasped, stumbling back. At the same time, Jasmine contended with Carter, who was fuming, eyes wild. "You'll pay for that," he snarled, charging forward. He was larger, with more brute strength, but Jasmine's technique proved superior. She evaded his attempts to grab her, landing strategic counterstrikes that rattled him more than once. Still, Carter refused to back down. It was as if his pride and something deeper Darker compelled him to overpower the black girl who dared to stand against him. The entire gym was in uproar. The band had stopped playing, leaving only the cacophony of shouts and scuffles. Many students watched in awe, some cheering on the twins, others frozen in shock. Winston managed to push past one of the black-jacketed men, nearly toppling over in the process, but found himself blocked by two more. "Get away from my children," he roared, trying to shove them aside, but they held firm. Jordan landed a punch on Tristan's jaw, sending him sprawling. The bleach-haired kid attempted to grab Jordan from behind, but Jordan twisted free, hooking his arm around the attackers and delivering a knee strike to the gut. The kid slumped with a groan. Brandon, winded but stubborn, took one last swing, which Jordan ducked. Responding in a fluid motion, Jordan swept Brandon's leg, toppling him onto his back. Just as Jordan turned to help Jasmine, a chilling crack reverberated through the gym. Carter had grabbed a metal folding chair from the sidelines and swung it at Jasmine's head. She barely managed to block it with her forearm, and the impact made her yelp in pain. Cameras flashed, capturing the brutal moment. Rage flared in Jordan's chest. He charged at Carter, driving a shoulder into the older teen's abdomen. The chair clanged to the ground as Carter stumbled. Jasmine, arm throbbing, ducked away, her breath ragged. Then, with a final burst of resolve, she delivered a spinning back kick to Carter's midsection, knocking him flat. The crowd exploded into cheers and screams, and Winston seized the opening to dash onto the court, finally free from the black-jacketed men's barrier. Before the men in black could regroup, the shrill blare of police sirens pierced the air. Red and blue lights flashed through the gym's windows. Uniformed officers poured in through multiple entrances, weapons drawn, barking orders for everyone to stand down. The black-jacketed men attempted to melt into the crowd, but staff members pointed them out, and the police quickly apprehended them. Chaos reigned as officers separated the battered bullies from the bruised but victorious twins. Carter, sprawled on the floor, glared daggers at Jasmine and Jordan while paramedics checked him over. Brandon coughed, Tristan's lip bled, and the bleach-haired teen cradled his side. Meanwhile, Winston embraced his children, relief flooding his face. Principal Rogers, pale and shaken, tried to salvage control, but the situation had gone far beyond school discipline. A cluster of officers questioned the black-jacketed men, who turned out to be local roughnecks hired by Harold Hall's associates. Their job? Intimidate anyone who dared challenge Carter and ensure the pep rally demonstration went smoothly in Carter's favor. Now they were cuffed and facing multiple charges: assault, disturbing the peace, resisting arrest, possibly a hate crime enhancement if the dad decided to pursue it. Carter, still defiant, was led away in handcuffs, screaming about his father's power. "You'll regret this," he yelled, spittle flying from his lips. "You can't do this to me." My dad knows the mayor. Brandon, Tristan, and the bleach-haired teen followed, each subdued by an officer. Some onlookers jeered at them, while others stood, stunned, as the reality of what had just transpired sank in. Jasmine and Jordan were also questioned by the police, but several eyewitnesses and countless phone recordings clearly showed the twins had acted in self-defense. They'd been provoked and attacked. A paramedic checked Jasmine's arm, bruised but not broken, and offered her an ice pack. Jordan's knuckles were swollen, but otherwise, he escaped with minor bruises. As Winston guided them out of the gym, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. A wave of applause, cheers, and supportive shouts rose, punctuated by cell phone flashes. Monique stood near the exit, tears of relief on her cheeks, clapping as hard as she could. Other classmates rushed in to congratulate the twins, praising their courage. The police escorted the entire hall posse to waiting squad cars, their expressions ranging from dazed to furious. On the sidelines, a journalist from the local news station snapped photos, capturing Carter's scowling face as he was placed in the back seat of a cruiser. The story would undoubtedly make headlines: high school pep rally turns violent amid racial tensions, or something similarly sensational. Yet for the McAllisters, the final note ringing in the crisp night air was one of vindication. Jasmine and Jordan had refused to cower or yield to hateful intimidation. They proved their strength without stooping to the same cruelty and venom as their tormentors. And at least for one moment, justice felt tangible. The karmic retribution Carter and his cohorts had unwittingly sown finally crashed down upon them, leaving no doubt that bigotry had no place even in a town like Oak Ridge. Winston walked between the twins, an arm around each, his eyes shining with pride and relief. The night sky spread above them as they left the gym behind, its stars appearing like faint, hopeful lights peeking through the lingering clouds. Though their wounds still throbbed, Jasmine and Jordan felt a sense of deep triumph, knowing that their strength, physical and moral, had prevailed over the darkest kind of adversity. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster tale of perseverance, faith, and righteous revenge. When prejudice and danger crossed their path, Jasmine and Jordan McAllister stood tall, proving that discipline and unity can overpower even the most vicious threats. Their story reminds us that courage blossoms when we least expect it, and that justice can shine through darkness when we refuse to surrender. If you found yourself rooting for these remarkable twins, please support the channel by hitting that like button, sharing this video with friends, and subscribing for more gripping stories that underscore life's vital lessons. Your engagement helps keep such narratives alive, inspiring others to tackle their own battles with grace and resolve. Thank you again, and remember, real power lies in using our strengths responsibly to uplift ourselves and others.